I never thought Ethan would block my number. But when I stared at my phone that morning, call failed, message undelivered, something inside me shattered completely. My hands were resting on my stomach, where our baby was hidden, small and new, and maybe unwanted. I'm Julian, an omega who was only asking his alpha for one meeting, just one. But Ethan gave me silence instead, and that silence broke me from the inside out. 3 months ago, everything was perfect. Ethan, tall, sharp-jawed, with that scent of cedar and smoke that always calmed me down. He was my entire world. We worked together in the corporate world, and his presence made me feel stable, grounded. His alpha instincts were incredibly strong, both protective and possessive. I never wanted him to leave me, but then his company merged with the New York office. The transfer order came. And me, I stayed behind, alone, holding a positive pregnancy test in my trembling hands. When I told him through text because he'd gotten so busy he barely answered calls anymore, he sent back one line. "We'll talk later," but that later never came. After that, his calls slowly decreased. Then they stopped completely. Then blocked. Today I was standing outside the clinic, my ultrasound report tucked into my jacket. The doctor had told me the baby was perfectly healthy, but I wasn't healthy. My scent had weakened, strawberries and vanilla, which used to be soft and sweet, now completely faded. I couldn't sleep at night. I was losing weight when I should have been gaining it, because Ethan had ignored me like I didn't matter at all. What do I do now? I asked myself, staring at my reflection in the clinic's glass door. My eyes looked hollow, my skin pale. But my baby, he was alive, and he deserved a better life, even if mine wasn't. I pulled out my phone, my hands still shaking. One more message, maybe my last attempt. "Ethan, please, just once. I need to see you. It's about us and our baby." Send. Delivered. Read. Then, blocked. I collapsed right there on the sidewalk. People saw me. Someone helped me up. But no one could understand that my alpha, the one who had bitten me, claimed me, promised to stay with me forever, was now treating me like a complete stranger. That was his biggest mistake. Because if Ethan had abandoned me, then I would rebuild myself. But this time, I would live without him. The walk back to my apartment felt endless. Every step reminded me of how heavy my body felt, how exhausted I was, not just physically, but emotionally drained. I kept replaying the moment I'd seen blocked flash across my screen. How was that even possible? How could someone who once whispered promises against my skin now erase me so completely? I climbed the stairs to my second-floor apartment, each step harder than the last. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was watering her plants on the landing. She looked at me with concern but didn't say anything. Maybe she could see it on my face, the devastation, the emptiness. I gave her a weak smile and unlocked my door, stepping into the small space that had become my sanctuary and my prison. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. I used to love silence, but now it just reminded me that I was alone. I dropped my keys on the counter and moved to the couch, sinking into the worn cushions. My hand automatically went to my stomach, a gesture that had become almost unconscious now. "It's just us now," I whispered to the tiny life growing inside me. "And that's okay. We'll be okay." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. I thought back to the beginning when Ethan and I first met at the company orientation. He'd walked into the conference room late, and every omega in the room had turned to look. But his eyes had found mine immediately, like some invisible thread connected us. That night he'd asked me to dinner. 3 months later we'd moved in together. 6 months after that he'd bitten my bonding gland during my heat, making us permanent. Or so I'd thought. The merger announcement had come suddenly. Ethan's entire division was being transferred to New York within 2 months. He'd tried to stay positive about it, talking about long distance, about visiting every weekend, but I could see the stress building in him. The way his jaw would tighten when discussing logistics, how his scent would spike with anxiety. Then I'd gotten pregnant. I'd taken the test alone in our bathroom, hands shaking as I watched the 2 lines appear. My first emotion had been pure joy. We were going to have a family. But then reality crashed down. Ethan was leaving in 3 weeks. We hadn't discussed children yet. What if he didn't want this? What if the timing was all wrong? I'd texted him the news because I couldn't wait. I needed to know how he felt, needed his reaction immediately. His response, "We'll talk later," had felt like a door slamming in my face. And after that, everything had spiraled. Now, sitting in my empty apartment, I wondered if I'd made a mistake telling him through text. Maybe I should have waited, told him in person. But would it have made a difference? He'd still left, still stopped calling, still blocked me. My phone buzzed and my heart leaped. But it was just a notification from my insurance company about the clinic visit. I set the phone down and closed my eyes, fighting back tears. I needed to be stronger than this. For my baby, I needed to pull myself together. The ultrasound images were still in my jacket pocket. I pulled them out, studying the grainy black and white photo. There, that tiny shape, barely recognizable as human yet, but unmistakably real. My child, our child. I'm going to give you everything, I promised, tracing the outline with my finger. Even if your father isn't here, you'll have me, and I'll be enough. I have to be. My phone rang suddenly, making me jump. Unknown number. My breath caught. Could it be? Hello? Hi? Is this Julian Hayes? This is Dr. Morrison's office calling about your next appointment. The disappointment was crushing. Yes, that's me. We have an opening next Tuesday at 2. Does that work for you? That's fine. Great. And Julian, make sure you're eating regularly and taking your prenatal vitamins. The doctor noticed you've lost some weight since your last visit. I will, thank you. I hung up and stared at my phone. Part of me wanted to throw it across the room, watch it shatter against the wall. But I couldn't afford a new phone right now. I couldn't afford much of anything. Tomorrow I'd go back to work. I'd smile at my coworkers, pretend everything was normal. I'd sit at my desk and process reports and attend meetings. And I'd pray I didn't run into Ethan in the hallways, because I didn't know if I could handle seeing him without falling apart completely. But tonight I'd let myself feel everything. The pain, the rejection, the fear. Tomorrow I'd be strong. Tonight I'd just survive. 2 weeks had passed since that day. I'd settled back into my small apartment, learning how to piece together my broken life bit by bit. Morning sickness had become routine now, waking up with nausea, weakness spreading through my limbs. My scent had grown even fainter, a side effect of the omega suppression pills. I'd gotten them from my doctor so I'd appear stronger in public so people wouldn't judge me. So Ethan would never know how completely I'd fallen apart without him. Going back to the office was probably the hardest decision I'd made, but I needed the money. For the baby. For myself. For survival. I sat at my desk one afternoon, sorting through files, trying desperately to focus, when suddenly I saw him, Ethan. He stood outside the conference room in a perfectly tailored suit, coffee cup in hand, chatting casually with a colleague. His scent, cedar and smoke, hit me even from this distance. My heartbeat stopped. My hands started trembling over the files. I wanted to stand up, walk over, scream at him, break down crying, but I couldn't do anything, because his eyes never even landed on me. He looked right past me and kept walking, like I didn't exist at all. He was laughing with his new assistant, Travis, a beta, smaller build, pleasant smile. Maybe he was my replacement. Maybe Ethan didn't like omegas anymore. Or maybe he just didn't like me. I rushed to the bathroom immediately. Inside, I stared at myself in the mirror. Eyes completely red, lips trembling, my stomach slightly rounded. Not obvious yet, but I knew it was there. I adjusted my shirt, took a deep breath. Then I went back to my desk and worked like nothing had happened. But after that day, my decision was final. I was getting out of here. I submitted a transfer request. West Coast office, California, far away, safe, where Ethan would never come, where his memory wouldn't torture me daily. But fate apparently had other plans. That night when I left my apartment building, a car sat in the parking lot. Black, expensive, familiar. The window rolled down and my heart stopped completely. Ethan, Julian, he said, his voice flat, cold. I stopped walking. My heart felt like it was exploding inside my chest. What do you want? Get in, we need to talk. I laughed. A bitter, broken sound. Now? 3 months later and now you want to talk? His jaw tightened. I said get in. I didn't move toward the car. Instead, I walked closer and leaned down to the window, looking directly into his eyes. No, you missed your chance, Ethan. I don't want anything from you anymore. Not a single thing. I started walking toward my apartment building. But he got out of the car quickly, came up behind me and grabbed my wrist. Tight, pulled me back. Julian, stop. Let me go. I jerked my hand away. Tears were coming now, hot and unstoppable. You blocked me, ignored me, like I was garbage. You have no right to touch me now. His eyes widened, filled with confusion. Blocked you? I never blocked your number. I stared at him furiously. Liar. Show me the texts. he said desperately. Show me the calls. Something inside me shifted. What did he mean? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, opened my message history, my call logs. Everything showed the same story: failed attempts, undelivered messages, blocked contact. I turned the screen toward him. His face went completely pale, like he'd seen a ghost. He quickly pulled out his own phone, checking his call logs, his messages, his contacts. Nothing. No record of anything. Julian, he breathed. I swear to God I never blocked you. I never intentionally ignored you. My chest tightened painfully. Then what is all this? I'm not crazy, Ethan. He stared at his screen for several seconds, then called his assistant. Travis, did you touch my phone settings in the last 3 months? Block any calls? Filter any messages? I couldn't hear the response clearly from the other end, but whatever was said made Ethan's face turn completely red. Pure rage. You did what? He shouted into the phone. You blocked someone's number without my permission? Are you out of your mind? I stood frozen in shock. Travis? His assistant? He'd done all this? Ethan hung up angrily and looked at me, guilt and pain flooding his expression. Julian, Travis manually blocked your number from my phone, without me knowing. He thought I wanted to move on from you, that you were a distraction. My mouth fell open. This was betrayal on a completely different level. Someone had deliberately separated us. You really didn't know? I whispered, still struggling to believe it. No. I swear on everything I have. His voice cracked. I was looking for you everywhere, Julian. I called your old number so many times, but you'd changed it. I went to your old apartment. You'd moved out without telling anyone. I thought you'd left me on purpose. Something broke inside me in that moment. We stood there in silence. Both of us shattered. My hands moved to my stomach automatically, a protective gesture I couldn't control anymore. Ethan's eyes followed the movement, then slowly lifted back to my face. There's something you need to know, I said quietly, my voice barely audible. What is it? I took a shaky breath. This was it. The moment that would change everything. I'm carrying your child, Ethan. I've been pregnant for 3 months. Time seemed to stop completely. His breathing halted. His eyes went wide, locked on mine. What did you say? I slowly lifted my jacket, revealing the small but undeniable bump beneath my shirt. Real, impossible to deny. His eyes stayed fixed on my stomach for what felt like forever. Then they rose to meet mine again. Shock, guilt, complete devastation. Julian, he whispered. Don't, I said firmly, dropping my jacket back down. I don't need your pity, I needed you to know the truth. That's all I wanted. But he reached out and grabbed my hand. Tight, desperate, like if he let go I'd disappear into thin air. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice breaking completely. God, Julian, I'm so sorry. For everything, for all of it. But sorry wasn't enough anymore. The pain was too deep, too raw. Words couldn't heal wounds this severe. We stood there in the parking lot as the evening grew darker. Two people who'd once been everything to each other, now strangers holding on to the fragments of what used to be. We sat in his car now, the leather seats cool against my back. Complete silence filled the space between us. Just tension hanging thick in the air. I pulled out my phone again, though my hands were still shaking. I showed him the screenshots, the entire list of blocked calls, every undelivered message, all the proof he needed. Ethan's face went pale like he'd witnessed something horrific. He grabbed his own phone frantically, scrolling through call logs, checking messages, reviewing contacts. Nothing appeared, no record anywhere. He looked at me, shock and confusion mixing together in his expression. Julian, I swear to God I never blocked you. I never ignored you intentionally. This doesn't make any sense. My chest felt tight, constricted. Then explain what I'm looking at. I'm not making this up, Ethan. He stared at his screen for several long seconds, then made a call. His assistant answered on the second ring. Travis, I need you to tell me something right now. Did you access my phone settings in the last 3 months? Block any numbers? Filter any messages without telling me? I couldn't hear the response clearly from where I sat, but whatever Travis said on the other end made Ethan's entire face flush red. Absolute fury. You did what? He shouted, his voice filling the car. You blocked someone's number from my phone without my permission? What gave you the right? Are you completely out of your mind? My heart pounded. Travis, his assistant, had done this? Deliberately sabotaged us? Ethan slammed his phone down and turned to me, guilt written all over his features. Julian. Travis admitted he blocked your number manually from my phone. He said he did it without my knowledge. He claimed he thought I wanted to move on from you, that you were distracting me from my career advancement. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't comprehend. Someone had actively worked to destroy what we had. You genuinely didn't know, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No, I swear on my life. His voice broke as he spoke. I was searching for you constantly, Julian. I called your old number dozens of times, but you'd changed it. I drove to your old apartment multiple times. You'd moved out without leaving any forwarding information. I genuinely thought you'd decided to leave me. Silence fell between us again. Heavy, painful. I watched him process everything, saw the guilt eating him alive. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but the hurt was still too fresh, too overwhelming. There's more you should know, I finally said, breaking the quiet. He turned to face me fully. What else? I hesitated, my hand unconsciously moving to rest on my stomach. His eyes tracked the movement immediately. I found out I was pregnant about 2.5 months ago. I began, forcing myself to maintain eye contact. I took the test alone in our bathroom. Well, your bathroom technically, since I'd already started packing to move out. His breathing became shallow, uneven. When I sent you that text message about needing to talk, about it being important, I was trying to tell you about the baby, but you never responded. Or at least I thought you never responded. Oh God, he whispered. I went to the clinic alone for my first appointment, heard the heartbeat alone, saw the first ultrasound alone, made every single decision about this pregnancy alone. My voice remained steady somehow, even though my emotions were spiraling. I spent weeks thinking you knew and didn't care, that you'd chosen your career over us, over our child. Julian, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I know that now, I interrupted. But it doesn't change what I went through. It doesn't erase the nights I spent crying myself to sleep, wondering what I'd done wrong, wondering why I wasn't enough for you to stay. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back instinctively. The rejection flashed across his face, painful and raw. Can I see? He asked quietly, gesturing toward my stomach. I considered refusing. Part of me wanted to deny him this, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I'd experienced. But another part, the part that remembered loving him, couldn't say no. Slowly, I lifted the edge of my shirt, revealing the small but definite curve of my belly. In the dim light of the car, it was unmistakable. Ethan's hand moved forward, then stopped. May I? I nodded, not trusting my voice. His palm settled gently against my stomach, warm and careful. I watched his face transform, shock melting into wonder, then crumbling into grief. There's really a baby in there, he said, voice thick with emotion. Our baby, yes. How far along? 13 weeks, almost into the second trimester. His thumb moved in a small circle against my skin, and I felt the baby flutter in response. Ethan's eyes widened. Did you feel that? I asked. Was that the baby moving? It started happening recently. A tear slid down his cheek. I'd never seen Ethan cry before, not in all the time we'd been together. He'd always been so controlled, so composed. I've missed so much already, he said brokenly. The first appointment, the heartbeat, all of it. You didn't miss it by choice, I acknowledged. But you still missed it. He nodded, understanding the distinction. Intent didn't erase impact. What happens now? He asked, still touching my stomach like he was afraid I'd make him stop. I don't know, I admitted honestly. I submitted a transfer request to California. I'm leaving in 6 weeks. His head snapped up. California? That's across the country. That's the point, Ethan. I can't stay here. I can't work in the same building, possibly run into you in hallways, and pretend everything's fine when my entire world fell apart. But the baby will be fine. I'll be fine. We'll manage without you, just like I've been managing for the past 3 months. The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were true. I'd learned to survive without him. I'd learned I was stronger than I thought. I want to be involved, he said urgently. Please, Julian. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but please don't take my child away from me. Let me be a father. Let me prove I can do better. I studied his face, searching for sincerity. I found it, along with desperation and genuine remorse. I need time, I finally said. Time to process all of this. Time to figure out what I want. What's best for the baby. How much time? I don't know. As much as I need. He slowly removed his hand from my stomach, and I lowered my shirt. The absence of his touch felt strange, like a phantom warmth lingering on my skin. "Can I at least have your new number?" he asked. "So we can communicate about the baby?" I considered this carefully. Giving him my number meant opening a door I'd worked hard to close. But he deserved to know about his child's development, about medical appointments and decisions. "Fine," I agreed, but only for baby-related conversations. Nothing else. "Understood." We exchanged numbers in silence. When I opened my car door to leave, he spoke again. "Julian?" I paused, looking back at him. "I really am sorry for everything, and I meant what I said. I want to prove I can be better, for you and for our baby." I didn't respond. I simply closed the door and walked toward my apartment, feeling his eyes on my back the entire way. Inside, I leaned against the door and finally let myself break down. Because even though I now knew the truth that he hadn't abandoned us intentionally, the pain of those 3 months couldn't be erased. The damage was done, and I had no idea if it could ever be repaired. The next morning, Ethan fired Travis, publicly, in front of the entire office. I wasn't there personally, but office gossip spreads faster than wildfire, and by noon I'd heard every detail. Travis had begged, made excuses, tried desperately to justify his actions, claimed he was protecting Ethan's career, said he thought he was doing the right thing. But Ethan hadn't let him speak beyond those first few stammered words. Security had escorted him out of the building like a criminal, his personal belongings hastily packed into a cardboard box. When I heard about it, I felt nothing. Just numbness spreading through my chest. No satisfaction. No sense of justice served. Just emptiness. Ethan started showing up at my apartment every day after that. Always with something: fresh flowers one day, homemade meals the next, handwritten letters of apology that grew longer and more desperate with each passing week. He kept saying he'd fix everything, that he'd be the father our baby deserved, that he wanted to earn back what we'd lost, but I didn't feel worthy of being earned back. Something fundamental had changed inside me during those 3 months of silence. I'd become someone different, someone harder. One evening I was in my new apartment. Small, simple, but peaceful in a way my old place had never been. When the doorbell rang, I assumed it was Ethan with another bouquet or container of soup. But when I opened the door, a woman stood there instead. Blonde hair, perfectly styled, elegant posture, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her scent carried light alpha pheromones, confident and commanding in a way that made my omega instincts bristle. "You're Julian?" she asked, her smile too sweet to be genuine. I nodded carefully, suddenly cautious. "Yes. Can I help you?" "I'm Lydia, Ethan's ex-fiancée." The word hit me like physical impact. Fiancé? Ethan had never mentioned being engaged to anyone, never said a word about a previous relationship that serious. "Fiancé?" I repeated, the word barely making it past my lips. She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "Yes, we were engaged almost 2 years ago. Things ended, but, well, we've been working on reconciling recently, trying to see if we can make it work this time around." My chest felt like it was cracking open from the inside. "You're lying." "Am I?" She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a photograph. Ethan and her together, both smiling at the camera. The photo was clearly recent, maybe taken within the last week based on Ethan's haircut. "Do you really think he came back to you because he loves you?" Lydia asked, her voice carrying a subtle edge of mockery. "He came back out of obligation, because you're pregnant and he feels responsible. But his heart? That's always been with me, Julian. Always will be." I slammed the door in her face, hard enough that the frame shook. Then I collapsed onto the floor and let myself break completely. The sobs came in waves, each one more desperate than the last. My control shattered entirely. Because maybe she was right. Maybe Ethan had never truly loved me. Maybe everything, the bond, the promises, all of it had just been temporary until something better came along. I stayed on that floor for what felt like hours, crying until I had nothing left inside. My hands eventually found my stomach, curling protectively around the small bump. "I'm sorry," I whispered to my baby. "I'm so sorry you're stuck with such a mess of a parent." But even as I said it, I made a decision. I wouldn't let Lydia's words destroy me. I wouldn't give her or Ethan that power. Whether he loved me or not, whether he was with her or not, I would survive this. My baby deserved a parent who was strong, who could stand on their own. I pulled myself up from the floor, wiped my face, and went to my laptop. The California transfer was already approved. I just needed to finalize the move date. I selected the earliest option available, 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks, and I'd be gone. Away from Ethan, away from Lydia, away from all of this pain. My phone buzzed with a text. Ethan, can we talk tomorrow? I want to discuss doctor appointments. I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me wanted to tell him about Lydia's visit, to demand answers. But another part, the part that was tired of being hurt, just wanted distance. I have an appointment Tuesday at 10, I typed back. You can come if you want. His response came immediately. I'll be there. Thank you. I set my phone down and moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Ethan was probably with Lydia right now. Probably holding her the way he used to hold me. Probably making promises to her while he made different promises to me. The thought should have broken me further. Instead, it just made me feel hollow. I went to bed early that night, exhausted from crying. But sleep didn't come easily. I kept seeing Lydia's face, her confident smile, that photograph of her and Ethan together. Kept hearing her words. His heart's always been with me. When I finally did sleep, I dreamed of being alone in a hospital room, giving birth with no one beside me. I woke up gasping, my hand immediately going to my stomach. It's okay, I whispered. Even if it's just us, we'll be okay. But I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. I went to work, came home, ate because I had to, slept when exhaustion forced me to. Ethan texted daily, but I kept my responses brief and clinical. He didn't push, didn't demand more than I was willing to give. On Tuesday morning, I arrived at the clinic 15 minutes early. I sat in the waiting room, hands folded over my stomach, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Ethan walked in exactly at 10. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his usually pristine appearance slightly disheveled. He sat down beside me, leaving a respectful distance between us. How are you feeling? He asked quietly. Fine. Any morning sickness still? The nurse called my name before he could ask anything else. We stood together and I could feel the tension radiating off him as we walked down the hallway to the examination room. The doctor came in smiling warmly. Julian, good to see you again, and this must be the father? Yes, Ethan said before I could respond. I'm Ethan. Wonderful. Let's take a look at how baby's doing, shall we? I lay back on the examination table, lifting my shirt to expose my stomach. The doctor applied the cold gel, and moments later, the room filled with the rapid sound of our baby's heartbeat. Ethan's breath caught. His hand reached out instinctively, then stopped, hovering in the air like he was afraid to touch me. Strong heartbeat, the doctor said. Everything looks perfect. Baby's measuring right on track for 14 weeks. On the screen, I could see the tiny form more clearly than last time. Arms and legs visible now, moving slightly. That's our baby, Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Our baby. The words felt strange, because increasingly it felt like just my baby, mine alone. The appointment ended quickly. The doctor gave me some pamphlets about second trimester nutrition and scheduled my next visit. Ethan and I walked out together in silence. In the parking lot, he finally spoke. Julian, can we please talk? Really talk? I looked at him, this alpha who'd claimed me, promised me forever, then disappeared when I needed him most. This man who might still be in love with someone else. What is there to talk about, Ethan? Everything. Us. The baby, the future. There is no us, I said, the words coming out flat and final. There's you, there's me, and there's a baby we're going to have to co-parent somehow. That's all. His face crumpled. Don't say that. Please, we can fix this. Can we? I interrupted. Can you fix 3 months of abandonment? Can you fix the fact that I went through the hardest time of my life completely alone because your assistant decided I wasn't good enough for you? Can you fix any of it? I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. The words burst out of me loud and raw. I needed you then, Ethan. I needed you and you weren't there. And now you show up with flowers and apologies like that makes everything okay. But it doesn't. It doesn't change anything. People in the parking lot were staring, but I didn't care anymore. I'm moving to California in 3 weeks, I continued, my voice dropping back to something calmer. I've already accepted the transfer. You can see the baby when they're born if you want. We'll work out custody arrangements. But you and me, we're done. I walked away before he could respond, before I could see the pain in his eyes and let it weaken my resolve. I was done being weak, done being hurt. From now on, I would be strong for myself, for my baby. Even if it killed me, I confronted Ethan that evening. I didn't wait, didn't let myself overthink it. I just called him as soon as I got home from the appointment. Lydia came to see me yesterday, I said the moment he answered, keeping my voice deliberately flat. Silence stretched across the line. Long, uncomfortable. Ethan, tell me the truth. Now, he exhaled heavily. Yes, we were engaged. But that relationship ended before I ever met you. Julian, it's in the past. You're seeing her again. I cut him off. It wasn't a question. Another pause, guilty and damning. There have been meetings. Her family's investing in my company's new project. It's strictly business. Stop, I said simply, and ended the call. I didn't have the energy to hear excuses. Didn't have the emotional capacity to parse truth from lies anymore. The next morning, I had a routine checkup scheduled at a different clinic, one closer to my apartment. The baby was perfectly healthy, heartbeat strong and steady. The doctor smiled reassuringly as she showed me the ultrasound images, but I couldn't smile back. I felt empty inside, like something vital had been carved out of me. I left through the clinic's side exit, trying to avoid the main entrance where I might run into someone I knew. But as I stepped into the parking lot, I froze. Ethan stood beside his car, and next to him, laughing at something he'd said, was Lydia. Her hand rested casually on his arm, comfortable and familiar, possessive. Ethan's eyes found mine across the parking lot. They went wide with shock. Time seemed to stop completely. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at the two of them together, at how natural they looked side by side. He quickly stepped away from Lydia, said something to her I couldn't hear, and started walking toward me with his hand outstretched. But I didn't wait. I turned and walked straight to the street, flagging down a passing taxi. I heard him calling my name, Julian. Wait, let me explain. But I didn't turn around. I climbed into the cab and gave the driver my address. Through the rear window, I saw Ethan standing in the middle of the parking lot, looking broken. Lydia had joined him, her hand on his shoulder, pulling him back toward his car. The image burned itself into my mind, proof of what I'd suspected all along. Ethan's heart wasn't mine. Maybe it never had been. Back at my apartment, I started packing in earnest. California couldn't come fast enough. I needed distance, needed space to breathe without Ethan's scent triggering memories of what we'd had and lost. My phone rang repeatedly over the next several hours. Ethan calling, texting, leaving voicemails I didn't listen to. I finally blocked his number entirely. If he needed to contact me about the baby, he could email. That night, I sat in my half-packed apartment and made a list of everything I needed to do before the move. Find a new doctor in California. Research hospitals with good maternity wards. Look into childcare options for when I returned to work after the baby was born. All the practical things that came with being a single parent. Because that's what I was now. Single, alone. My hand rested on my stomach, feeling the subtle movements of the baby inside. It's you and me, I whispered. We don't need anyone else. But saying it didn't make it true. Because late at night, when the apartment was dark and quiet, I still missed him, missed the way Ethan used to hold me, missed his scent surrounding me, missed feeling safe and loved. I hated myself for missing him. Hated that despite everything, the abandonment, the lies, Lydia, part of me still wanted him. The next 2 weeks passed in a haze. I worked, packed, made arrangements. Colleagues threw me a small going-away party that I barely remember attending. Someone gave a speech about how much I'd be missed. I smiled and thanked everyone and felt absolutely nothing. On my last day at the office, I cleaned out my desk, boxing up 3 years' worth of accumulated belongings. Photos, awards, a coffee mug someone had given me as a birthday gift. Evidence of a life I was leaving behind. I didn't see Ethan at all during those final weeks. I'd heard through the office gossip network that he'd been working mostly from the New York office, only coming back occasionally for meetings. Maybe Lydia was with him there. Maybe they were already planning their future together while I planned mine alone. On moving day, professional movers came and loaded everything into a truck. I stood in my empty apartment, looking at the bare walls and clean floors. So much had happened here. So many tears shed, so many sleepless nights. I was glad to leave it all behind. The flight to California was long. My back ached from sitting, and the baby seemed to protest the change in air pressure, moving restlessly. I kept my hand on my stomach throughout the flight, trying to soothe both of us. We're starting over, I told my baby silently. Clean slate, new beginning. My new apartment in San Francisco was small but bright, with large windows that let in afternoon sunlight. I'd chosen it specifically because it felt nothing like my old place. Nothing to remind me of Ethan or what we'd had. I spent the first week settling in, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, finding new routines, learning the neighborhood, locating the nearest grocery store, pharmacy, clinic. I registered with a new obstetrician, a kind woman named Dr. Chen, who specialized in high-risk pregnancies. Not that mine was high risk, but I wanted someone experienced, someone who'd seen everything. "You're doing well," she told me after my first appointment with her. "Baby's healthy, but you need to take care of yourself too, Julian. You've lost weight since your last recorded visit. Are you eating enough?" "I try," I admitted. "It's been a difficult few months." She looked at me with understanding eyes. "Are you getting enough support? Is the father involved?" "No, it's just me." "Well, you're not alone. We have excellent support groups here for single parents. I can give you some information if you'd like." I took the pamphlets she offered, though I doubted I'd use them. The idea of sitting in a circle, sharing my story with strangers, made my skin crawl. I'd gotten this far alone. I could keep going alone. The weeks turned into months. My belly grew larger, more prominent. I felt the baby's movements getting stronger, more frequent. Sometimes at night I'd watch my stomach move as tiny feet or hands pressed against my skin from the inside. "Hi there," I'd whisper during those moments. "I can't wait to meet you." I'd chosen not to find out the baby's gender, wanting at least one surprise in all of this. I decorated the nursery in soft yellows and greens, gender neutral and peaceful. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, volunteered for extra assignments, anything to keep my mind occupied. My new colleagues were friendly but respectful of boundaries, not pushing when I clearly didn't want to socialize beyond office hours. I was existing rather than living. But existing was enough for now. 6 months had passed since I'd last seen Ethan. 6 months since that day in the parking lot with Lydia. I'd unblocked his email address long enough to send him updates about the pregnancy ultrasound photos. Due date confirmation, nothing personal. He'd responded each time with thanks and questions I mostly didn't answer. He'd stopped trying to call after the first month, stopped sending gifts after the second. By month 3, even the emails had become less frequent. I told myself I didn't care, told myself I was relieved, but sometimes late at night when the baby kicked hard enough to wake me, I'd think about Ethan meeting his child for the first time. Wonder if he'd even want to. Wonder if Lydia would be there beside him. Wonder if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life by pushing him away. Then morning would come, and I'd push those thoughts aside and keep moving forward. Because moving forward was all I knew how to do anymore. 6 months after leaving, I stood on my balcony in San Francisco, holding my newborn son in my arms. Asher, I'd named him during labor, when the nurse asked what to put on the birth certificate, and the name had just come to me. Strong, meaningful, he was perfect. Tiny and warm against my chest, with downy black hair and gray eyes that seemed to look right through me. He had Ethan's coloring, Ethan's features. Looking at him was like looking at a miniature version of the man I'd loved and lost. But Ethan wasn't here, had never come, never even asked when the due date was, though I'd mentioned it in passing in one of those brief clinical emails months ago. I'd gone through labor alone, 23 hours of pain, with only nurses and a doctor I barely knew for support. I'd cried for Ethan during the worst contractions, my omega instincts screaming for my alpha even though my logical mind knew he wasn't coming. But I'd survived, brought Asher into the world despite everything. Now 3 weeks later, I was adjusting to life as a single parent. Sleepless nights, constant feedings, the overwhelming responsibility of keeping this tiny human alive and healthy. It was terrifying and exhausting and somehow exactly what I needed. Asher made a small sound, and I looked down at him. His eyes were starting to close, milk-drunk and content. "Just us," I whispered. "That's enough, isn't it?" Movement below caught my attention. A black car pulled into the parking lot. Expensive. Familiar. My heart stopped. Ethan stepped out slowly, looking up at my building. His eyes scanned the balconies until they found me. Even from this distance I could see how much he'd changed. Thinner, tired, his usual pristine appearance replaced by something more haggard. He looked broken, maybe as broken as I'd been. I should have gone inside, should have pretended I hadn't seen him, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away. "Julian," he called up, his voice carrying across the distance. Asher stirred against me, responding to the sound. "Please," Ethan continued, loud enough for me to hear clearly. I know I've failed you in every way possible, but I need to meet him, our son, just once, please. My arms tightened protectively around Asher. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to protect my baby from potential hurt. But another part of me, the part that remembered loving Ethan, that recognized him as my baby's father, couldn't say no. I carried Asher inside and down the stairs carefully. My hands shook as I unlocked the building's entrance door. Ethan stood on the other side, and up close he looked even worse. Red-rimmed eyes, hollow cheeks, his scent was weak, barely detectable. He looked like he'd been through hell. Good. Part of me thought viciously. He deserved it. Lydia? I asked before he could say anything. I needed to know. Gone, he said immediately. Completely ended. I cut all ties weeks ago. The moment I realized what I'd done, what I'd lost. His eyes dropped to the bundle in my arms. His breath caught audibly. Julian, I made so many mistakes, let people manipulate me. Let pride and stupidity drive away the only person who mattered. But I'm here now and I'm begging you, let me be part of this. Part of our son's life, part of your life if you'll still have me. I adjusted Asher's blanket, giving myself time to think, to breathe. What changed? I asked quietly. Why now? Why show up after 6 months of silence? Because I've been an idiot, he said, his voice rough. Because I spent months trying to prove to myself I didn't need you, that I could move on. But I can't, I don't want to. And our son deserves better than an absent father who was too proud to fight for his family. Asher chose that moment to wake up fully, his eyes opening to look around. His gaze landed on Ethan and he made a small curious sound. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. May I hold him? Every fiber of my being wanted to refuse, to protect Asher from potential heartbreak. But I also knew that keeping them apart would hurt my son more than anything else could. Slowly, carefully, I transferred Asher into Ethan's arms. Ethan's hands shook as he cradled our baby for the first time. Tears streamed down his face openly now. He's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. His name is Asher, I said softly. Asher, Ethan repeated, testing the name. It's beautiful. He's beautiful. We stood there in the doorway, the three of us, while evening settled around us. Ethan couldn't seem to stop staring at Asher. Memorizing every feature. I want to be here, he said finally, looking up at me. Not as an obligation. Not out of guilt. Because I love you, Julian. I never stopped. And I love our son. I want to be a real father. A real partner. If you'll let me try. I studied his face, searching for deception. Found only raw honesty and desperate hope. I don't trust you, I admitted. I don't know if I can trust you again after everything. I know, and I'll earn it back. However long it takes. No more secrets, no more Lydia's or business excuses or people manipulating you. Never again, I swear. Asher began to fuss and I took him back instinctively. The absence of weight in Ethan's arms seemed to physically pain him. You can visit, I said carefully. You can be in Asher's life. But you and me? That's going to take time. A lot of time. And there are no guarantees, Ethan. I might never be able to forgive you completely. I understand, he said. Whatever you need, whatever timeline you need, I'm not going anywhere this time. You have to mean that. Because if you disappear again, if you hurt him the way you hurt me, I'll make sure you never see either of us again. I mean it, I promise you, Julian, I'm here to stay. I wanted to believe him. Wanted so desperately to trust that this time would be different. But trust had to be earned, not given freely. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here, I said. Tomorrow morning at 9, we can talk about custody arrangements, visitation schedules, all the practical things. I'll be there. And Ethan, don't be late. Not even by a minute. I won't be. He left reluctantly, looking back multiple times before getting in his car. I watched him drive away, Asher peaceful in my arms. Inside my apartment, I sat in the rocking chair I'd bought for late-night feedings. Asher looked up at me with those gray eyes so like his father's. What do you think? I asked him. Should we give him a chance? Asher yawned, completely unconcerned with adult problems. I smiled despite everything. Yeah, maybe we should. For the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than emptiness. Not quite hope, not quite happiness, but something close, something that felt like possibility. Tomorrow, Ethan would prove whether he meant his promises. And the day after, and every day following. And maybe eventually we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. Maybe we could become a family after all. but only time would tell.